afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Smart Gardening online workshop, Japanese Maples in Containers, sponsored by Essence of the Tree. We have gardeners from across the country registered for today's workshop, so I want to welcome everybody. My name is Patty Dunning. I'm the Horticulture Community Leader, and I will introduce our program presenter in just a minute. But first, I want to go over a few details about how today's workshop will run. First of all, your phone line is muted to limit background noise, so you cannot speak directly to me or to Tricia Smythe, who's presenting today. If you experience any technical difficulty during the workshop, use the questions section on your monitor to type in any problems, and our team will help you resolve the problem quickly. Also, during today's presentation, if you have a question for Tricia, type it into that same questions section. We'll be able to field a few questions at the end of today's workshop. Our editor, Megan Shin, will help us with that. So that's essentially how the mechanics work. And then just a reminder that we are recording today's workshop, and you will receive an email from us early next week with a link to that recorded workshop, so that you can come back to it anytime if you want to refer back to some of the images that you see today. So now I'm pleased to introduce today's workshop presenter, Tricia Smythe. Tricia comes from a rich history of horticulture. Her mother was the founder of Mountain Maples in California in 1985. Then after her mother's death in 2006, Tricia founded Essence of the Tree. Japanese maples are her passion, comfort, and inspiration, and we're so happy to have you with us today, Tricia. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Patty. I'm pleased to be here, and welcome to my friends and fellow gardeners out there. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share my passion for the trees and to help you understand more about how to grow these trees in containers. Growing the trees in containers allows us to have the trees in our intimate spaces and have them a part of our daily lives.
It's true, and I know you have so much information. Do you want to just go ahead and launch right on into the presentation?
Yes, please. Let's go.
Let's do. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Patty. So this is a picture of my mother's red dragon. It was the first tree that we began working with, the Japanese maples in containers. Growing Japanese maples in containers is derived from bonsai. The idea of the cultural information about how to take care of and maintain them is historically derived from bonsai. The Japanese consider the trees ancestral, and they go from one generation to the other, whether they're bonsai or trees in containers. But growing the Japanese maples in containers allows us to have the trees in our intimate spaces, to observe them on a daily basis, to really participate in the process of their growing. We get to observe the subtle changes that happen as the seasons, as we go from season to season. It also gives us the flexibility of moving the trees, and I know as gardeners we know that we can move them even if they're planted, but having the tree, being able to move it to focal points in the garden at different times of the year is a wonderful opportunity. So this is a red dragon, also red dragon in Massachusetts as a bonsai. Growing trees in containers allows us to have more a closer relationship with the trees. If we go on to the next slide here, you'll see this is the same tree. This is my mother's tree many years later, and the reason and this is in the summer on the deck, a new container, many root prunings later. I guess this is about 20 years later almost, and we come in relationship with the trees. It's really a lovely thing. I talk about how And this is the same tree in the fall, same tree, and it really allows us to bring the trees into our closer spaces. And if we go on, so the first part of creating a Japanese maple container garden is, of course, selecting the trees. And when we begin to select trees, we look at first where we are, where we live, what the climate is. Are you in a hotter climate or a colder climate? There's incredible diversity among the trees, just incredible diversity. And there are definitely some that are much more cold tolerant and some that are more heat tolerant. We obviously want to look at what is going to fit within our space and where we want to put the trees. This is a bonsai, but a large bonsai, more pinjing, that it really can show you how it can, even such a small tree can have such an impact in a space. When we go to make selections for trees, the first thing to look at too is the crown, the beginning of the tree. The top will change. We definitely will be looking at how over the years you're going to be working with the structure of this tree, and the top of the tree will change. But to begin, you want to be sure that you have a beautiful transition from the soil up and the roots into the trunk of the tree. And first and foremost, we want to be able to show the lower branches. So structurally, that's a really important consideration. If we go on to the next slide here, one of the things that often people will look at first wanting to have the big tree. I love starting with young trees and the whole process of working with the tree over all of the years. And so these are just a couple of photographs of young trees in smaller containers. Now, ultimately, we will grow these trees up and increase the size of the containers, and until they reach the ultimate size that we're looking for. So this little Wilson's pink dwarf will ultimately get to be about 6 feet in a container. It's upright in form, yeah, and it's planted with some little cyclamen coum, which will multiply, and you can divide later on. But they're sweet. They're just sweet, and they do require more care, absolutely. The smaller the container, the more regular maintenance care it's going to need, regular watering and so forth. But starting with a younger tree allows you the opportunity to experience the whole process. A juvenile young tree is much different than a mature tree. So it's one way of doing it. This next slide here is a beautiful, one of a really important consideration in selecting a tree is to look for the movement of the tree. Trees that have been rigidly staked are not desirable. What we really want is to see the movement. It's almost, Japanese maples in their natural habitat grow at the edge of the forest. They're an understory tree. They're shallow, fibrous roots. And so if you were to see them in their natural habitat, they're peeking out from under the edges, and their branches are reaching out, open, layered form. But the movement is what I want to encourage you to look for in selecting a tree, is look for the movement of the tree. Also understanding, as you're looking at trees, understanding what the nature of the individual trees. There's incredible diversity from the very upright to the wide spreading. This, of course, is a red rugose, which is an upright if you have a narrower space that you really want to put a high impact, the red, the intensity of the red of this tree is hard to imagine how intensely red. And you can also see the structural, the green bark. The previous image didn't really show you, but here I popped this one in just to show you the contrast of that incredible green bark with the red. And then, of course, it's changing. Red rugosa is a red, red, red. It's red emergence in spring. These are primarily red. Then deep, almost purple red in the summer, and then fire flame red in the fall. So, yes, whoa, it's a lot of impact. But it offers an upright, narrow form on the back corner of a deck. It's outstanding. It anchors a corner. It's an outstanding tree, really an outstanding tree. It is constrained. I've had one in a container now. It's about 20 years old, and it's maybe 6 feet tall. No, probably a little bit more than that, but not much. So I've root pruned it 4 times now. So it's an outstanding tree. And it's upright form, red, high impact, beautiful structure. And next we have Flash and Splash. This is Beni Shishi Henji, and the Japanese maples have an incredibly variegated selection. They are the variegation range is extraordinary. This is one of the older variegations, hot pink in spring, as you can see, and it goes to the pink will change to a creamy color, giving an overall blue-green effect in the through the summer months. And the fall colors is a two-tone red, so it's light pale pink and then deep red for fall. Then with a tree like this, what you achieve having it in a container is being able to observe these intricate details. In the landscape, this tree is hardly desirable because it just shoots straight up, and all of that incredible detail is over your head. So consider that when you're selecting a tree, the opportunity to have those extraordinary details right there where you can see them. That's a lovely thing, and once again, somewhat upright. This is Sumagaki, which is soft, very soft, pale green with bright, Sumagaki means red fingernail. So you can see that in the spring, the red tips on the lobes of the leaves are the primary feature that this tree is known for. I happen to love its form. It's open, and it's wide and loose and open. To have this tree on a deck or in a container, you need to have quite a bit of horizontal space. They can be constrained. I have seen this in a container. The tree was about 10 years old, about 4 feet tall, and about 5 feet wide. So it's not vigorously growing, so that it is easy to maintain in a container. But lovely details, once again, soft and cool. And then for hot and bright and intense color, there's the purple ghost. This is another one of the variegated trees. You can see the reticulated variegation, which means it's an organized variegation. It follows the structure of the leaf. And this particular tree is actually more vigorously growing than many in this group, but nonetheless very manageable in a container. The form is about equally as wide as tall, so you're going to be looking at about a 6 foot tall, 6 foot wide tree. And once again, red, 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 very intense color. And I should mention in your selection to consider the lighting. Anytime we have trees that are primarily red in the summer, they will need to have at least 3 or 4 hours of direct sun to maintain the red color. Otherwise, they tend to move toward a dark green in a shadier location. So that is a consideration as you're choosing, if you have a specific location, that if you have more shade, you should probably work with the trees that are green or yellow in the summer months. Purple Ghost is an outstanding tree. And we have also, this is a viridis, which is a weeping cascading dissectum, a very old cultivar, and it's become a generic name for green dissectum. But the reason I put this, I wanted to show you this slide is the lower branch and the structure. If you look at the flare at the base and this first lower branch and then the crown coming up, that lower branch is what you want to be sure to have when you, maybe not necessarily at such a horizontal line. If you're choosing a more upright tree, the line would be more vertical. But selecting a tree, your selection, the consideration of that trunk line and that lower branch is very important. And this is obviously a very beautiful tree.
Now, can I ask you a real quick question?
Sure, of course.
A couple of these have, like, for example, the one we're looking at is not in a container, but all of these are suitable for containers?
Yes, and that's, I really didn't want to limit to just photos of trees in containers when there are so many possibilities.
Great, I just wanted everyone to know that too.
Yeah, all of the trees, other than the most vigorously growing, there are probably a half a dozen trees that I would not recommend for a container in the Japanese maples.
Okay, great. Yeah. Let's go on.
And peaches and cream. This is definitely one, as you can see, the detail is extraordinary, and to have that right at where you can enjoy it in your outdoor living space is that kind of detail is wonderful. Very light and airy. It's slow growing, going to get to be maybe 5 feet in a container, at least 5 feet wide. Of course, you can prune to keep it smaller than that. But this is one that is best suited to milder climates, or I should say less heat. Not a very heat-tolerant tree at all.
Okay.
Orange in the fall, wonderful fall color. And this is an upright growing dissectum or variegated tree. Ukigumo has an irregular variegation, so it's just splotches of, or even a dust. It's called a fu variegation, or like almost a dusting across the top. Very exquisitely beautiful, very pink, pastel pink in the spring, and very petite. This tree is in a garden in Southern California. It does extremely well. That tree is about, well, this tree in a container could probably easily be kept to 4 or 5 feet without any problem. And upright, narrow, constrained is going to work really well in a smaller application if you have a very limited amount of space. And we have next, this is a sensu, and this is a tree that is from the Shirasawanum species and is very much better suited to colder climates. I'm going to talk for a minute about colder climates and growing trees in containers. Really, we recommend that the containers not go below 15 degrees, which means if you live in a climate that has severe winters, people will insulate the containers, and also people will bring them into an unheated basement or garage. We can talk more about that. But the first part is selecting a tree that is more suited to colder climates. All of the Shirasawanum group, this is an exquisite tree that has wide-spreading, almost willow-like form and an outstanding color. So that's another choice.
Wow.
Lovely, huh?
Yeah, it really is, and up against that evergreen, it's a great
Yeah,
contrast.
yeah. And this is Sweet Shayna. You have a very limited amount of space. You want to have a lot of impact. This is the red low dwarf that you can use. They're not my favorite for containers because I really love structural interest, and this tends to have more of a bush form.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are applications where you have just a 3 by 3 foot space you really want red. That is the tree. It is very heat tolerant. It's not extremely cold tolerant, although it has reasonable, it goes to zone 6, but not really zone 5. So, but it's another choice for a small, compact, dense form if for bright red. And we have, this is a classic, Mikawa Yatsubusa, which means shingles on a roof, and it refers to how the leaves layer one on top of another. Very true dwarf. The inner nodes where the leaves come out are often not even a centimeter apart. So the opportunities, and it has almost like a candelabra-like form. It is definitely upright, but it is not widespreading or dense. It always has open spaces. Perfect for containers because of its year-round interest. Structure is also beautiful here. This tree is planted with some sedum and heuchera and one of my redwood boxes.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you. And this is a close-up of the structure on the Mikawa Yatsubusa. This is a very old tree. But what I encourage people in pruning to open up spaces for viewing the inside of the tree. And that's the effect. The Ryusin is an extreme. This is a relatively new tree, and it is extremely pendulous, vigorously growing, excellent heat tolerance, which means it is a wonderful choice for a container out on a hot deck if you have a place. I have seen this cascading completely down a wall, you know, sitting on the deck and cascading down the other side. So if you have a step that's coming up, it can be cascading down as you're walking up the step. Beautiful thing. The biggest challenge with this tree is it needs to be staked up to reach whatever height you want it. Otherwise, it's going to completely cascade. It's fun. It's a fun. If you enjoy working with the trees, then you'll enjoy this tree a lot. Bright red fall, like I said, and easy. It does need to be root pruned more often until it slows down. And at about 10 years, they begin to slow down. One of the things, this is Koto no Ito, which is one of the linear lobum, a very narrow strap-like leaf. But you know, one of the impacts of the trees is their textural impact. This is very, very soft. If you have hard lines, you need to soften. This is a wonderful tree to do it with. It is fairly dense, so it doesn't have the structural interest in the summer. It is heat tolerant, easy to grow, not at all difficult to grow. So it's a lovely tree. And Spring Delight, the weeping cascading form is the one people, for structure, this is an outstanding interest. It is vigorous, this particular tree, which means you'll have plenty of opportunities to prune. Consider your horizontal space because it will take up some space on a deck or patio. And fall color and, once again, structure. In this image, it almost looks as though these trunks are winding around one another. That's not the case. One is in front and one is in back. But it does show these incredible curving lines. And, of course, fall color, soft textural interest, outrageous fall color. And they've managed to constrain, this is in the Portland Japanese garden, And this tree is regularly pruned and have managed to keep it fairly small. And it's certainly possible to do that. For spring color, in the spring color types are the very best. If you live in an area that's warmer in the fall, our friends in Southern California and the Southwest often will choose from this group because the spring color rivals the fall color anywhere. And Shindishoujo is wonderful for a hotter climate, and the spring color rivals any fall color you've ever seen. And we have also, I believe, this is another from the spring, our spring color types. This is Benny Mako, Red Dancing Girl, and it's similar. This is spring color. Spring color comes no matter what, and it's a smaller form and wonderful for containers, Benny Mako. Sumi Nagashi, this is fall color. You can see the small container, and I moved this container out into this location because it was just flashing. I had a dinner party, and and she was the showgirl. She came out, and just, yeah, wonderful to greet my friends and family as they drove in the driveway. This little tree just was just shining star. Sumi Nagashi. And do consider group plantings with the trees, even in containers. These trees are, this is Purple Ghost and Shidava Gold, yellow. The contrast of the fall color is outstanding.
Oh, that's great.
Yes. And then the winter silhouette with the trees in the containers. How about that? Yeah. There are 4 seasons with the maples, as with everything, but they definitely are different and have opportunities to offer interest year-round. These are some of the bark, the clear yellow of the bihu. This is bright pink buds, hot pink buds, which as the spring, as they begin to push, they get more and more pink. Outrageous, wonderful color. And then most of us are familiar with the sangokaku, which is another incredible tree that offers wonderful winter interest. And they're not afraid of the snow. But I do have to say the most important thing is to find a tree you love, that when you find it, you will know that it is the one and you will enjoy it. So once you've selected your tree, you need to find a container. And the containers, the first consideration is the trees are, the Japanese maples have a shallow, fibrous root system. So containers need to be at least as wide as they are tall, and they need to have the widest point is the opening. So no urns or narrow openings, because as you're going to see here, when we get to do our root pruning, you're going to have a lot of trouble removing the tree from the container that way. So the redwood boxes, we use these, have been using them for many, many years. I encourage people to consider the weight of the container, because you will be moving it to do the root pruning, and as I said, you might want to move it about in your garden. The size of the container determines the ultimate size of the tree. If you constrain the root system, it's going to constrain the growth of the tree. If you're starting with a younger tree, or really regardless, you never want to more than double the volume of the soil when putting a tree in a container. So keep that in mind as you're selecting your container, although ultimately you may want your tree to be in a 50-gallon container and be large. If you're starting with a younger tree, you need to start with a smaller container and work up with it. Then we also talk about these drainage. You absolutely must have excellent drainage. It is the #1 killer of maples, is they're drowning. They need a very light, airy soil and excellent drainage. Consider selecting, as you select, looking at your container, the structure of the tree. I really love the redwood boxes are being more angular, work really well with a more structural upright tree. For these soft, open, wide spreading trees, I prefer the round form of the bowl. But that'll be something that when you look at them together, you'll know what is going to work best for you. That's just an aesthetic. And these are some containers that we have found that I found them, they last forever, and they're lightweight, and they don't crack, break, or split. We actually, when we use these containers, I'll take an oily cloth and polish them over right before a show when I'm using them for display pieces, and they have all the appearance of high-fired ceramic. They're wonderful. Whether you're choosing round or an oval, any one of these, once again, excellent drainage is really, really important. So consider your tree when you're selecting your container, as well as the pragmatics of what the container needs to do for you. Maples do best in a well-drained acid soil. We have a soil here that's 5 parts fir bark and 1 part pumice, and I also add a nutrient package that has the magnesium, calcium, and all the nutrients. A high-quality commercial mix is fine. Often people will get a high-quality commercial mix and add in a proportion of fir bark, orchid bark, the 1/4-inch orchid bark, to just increase the drainage, and that works very well. If you are in the Southwest or in any area that has heavy minerals in your water, consider purchasing a soil created for azaleas and camellias. That will immediately suit the trees. When you go to position, look to the movement of the tree as you position in relation to the shape of the container. We look at what you want to do is to, I think if you show the next slide here, we have, I use the bamboo stakes to create quadrants, and I tuck the tree into the back quadrant and have the movement of the tree going across the container. It's a welcoming, it's inviting you to come into the container, to the garden, so to speak.
I think going back and forth between these two, where you say put it in the back, and then the movement of the tree goes over the container.
There you go. That's exactly what I was looking at.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oops. What happened there?
Don't know.
Image missing. Let's go to the next one.
Okay. Well, we're talking about statuary and structure. So once you've placed your tree in and filled it to approximately within 1 inch of the height of the container, then you want to water the tree in, obviously making sure that all of the air pockets are out, and then consider garden ornaments as well. Everything needs to be in proportion to the tree, realizing that the tree is the focal point. These are to complement the tree, not to compete with the tree. So I love pieces that have architectural interest, so for instance, this particular piece has the appearance of just of a lost artifact. Often people will be walking through and see it and go, oh, it's not, they're surprised at what they see, and of course her serene beauty is wonderful.
Sure.
And and anytime we can, the stone is an important part of the garden, so we're always, often the statuary is the is the stone in the garden. These are granite, and the beauty of this piece is that it actually ages. The moss will grow on this over time. They're quite lovely. You know, we're fortunate here that we have these incredible stones that we can harvest out from our local rivers. Very hard stones, but generally they need to be rounded to give the impression of age, and slightly buried. Bury them about halfway so that it looks as though they've been sitting in that spot for many, many years and the soil is building up around them. That's just a way of, and here Kimber had a beautiful root, and this is her favorite stone, and sometimes this opportunity comes available where you can place a root, tuck a stone up under a root and have it growing up and over. Not at all difficult, and really a beautiful effect.
These are unique.
Yeah, just another interest, one or two. The main thing is that it's not competing. The bird's nest is obviously not going to last any period of time, but it's kind of fun. And but generally one in combination with some companion plants up next to the structure, to the crown of the tree, is beautiful. These are incredible when the light hits them. They glow. And I like it that they're not shiny. You know, they really look like they just kind of came up out of the dirt. I like that. Yeah. And this is another piece that we've developed here. Actually, my son is the artist, and yeah. Well, he started making jewelry, and I said, "Wow, these look like bonsai weights." The bonsai, the people use actually fishing weights. And then they began to evolve, and they made these rock ropes, and they are good for training branches. If you have a branch you want to bring down or move over, and they're also beautiful. So any kind of an ornament that just sort of like jewelry, rather than something that's going to compete, it's something that complements.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And companion plants, once again, the tree is the focal point, and companion plants are all about proportion. Is probably cultural. The cultural considerations are first, in that they cannot be competitive. The rule of thumb is, in a competitive situation, the maples lose. They're a non-aggressive grower, especially in their root system. So we have to choose plants that are not going to compete for nutrients and soil space. The species bulbs are perfect. They have this little bit of flash, and then they go away, and they come on often before the trees are even have emerged, so that it's almost a harbinger of spring.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Also, any of the azaleas. This is a dwarf rhododendron here with this great big tree. This is a 8-foot tree in a 33-gallon container, and we just planted this up. That's all of the sedum. That's Ogon sedum on the right there, the yellow, which is a nice color, and any of the sedum work really well. They live right on the surface of the soil, so it's really a wonderful choice. And this is this is an alpine perennial called the Primula washingtoniana, and very big name for a small plant, but doesn't get to be more than 3 inches tall. These delightful little blooms are about the size of your pinky. So I love this for the tiny little container gardens, the ones that are baby trees. And it does come on and bloom actually in February, March. And most all of the alpine perennials do well. In general, that group, there are some low epimediums that do really well. There are a great number of alpine perennials that do really well. So, and this is the Satsuki azaleas. This is Myojo, which has once again, it's the subtlety. It's primarily white, and it's I have to caution to watch out for the azaleas because of how intense their color can be, and they'll be in competition with the maples. So I tend to go toward the whites that have just a little splash of color, rather than something that's a great big hot pink.
Right,
And
absolutely.
so there's not much that's going to work with the maples there. And this is something that there are a whole group of dwarf hosta, and the hosta also work very well with the maples. Same cultural requirements: semi-acid, well-drained soil, dappled light, outstanding textural interest. This is one in particular, but there are any number of them that have wonderful variegation, and they're subtle and nice impact for the garden. There's another of our species tulips, one of my favorite, the Persian pearl, and this one also emerges before, as the leaves, the buds on the tree are just barely beginning to swell. This tulip will come up, and it's nice to have a group of 2 or 3 of them in the container. Iris cristata is one that will definitely multiply, and you'll divide. It also has a nice foliage, better for a taller tree because the foliage does get to be up to 8 inches, so you're going to want a tree that's at least 6 feet tall to be using this in a container. But they are wonderful for color in the spring and textural interest throughout the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Heuchera, and we did look at this container, and more sedum.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's an astilbe in there, and we have here, we use a moss, locally we use a moss that actually will use for both mulch and a ground cover. So it's nice. And this means, this is what it looks like when it's time to root, prune, and divide. A common question is, when do you need to root prune? Well,
right.
Well,
when it looks like that.
Like that, right? It's time. And I hope you've got someplace else to put some of those.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now you're going to tell us what it's.
Yes, I am.
How to do it.
And this is a root pruning. This tree, you can see the soil has compacted, and reduced, and it's completely packed with roots. So root pruning it generally is every 2 to 5 years. The younger trees are, the more often they need to be root pruned. You're going to want to gather some trees up, some tools up. Most important, you're going to want to have a saw, a hand saw, in order to saw roots. You're going to need to have, I use concave cutters. This is my mother's tool belt, and I cannot emphasize enough how wonderful it is to have good tools. You'll need to have a claw, a very good sturdy claw to really work over the roots with. And the red-handled scissors are wonderful for getting in tight places to cut out roots. It's good to have a spade. You'll need a spade as well as a shovel to be moving soil back into the container. Okay. And this is when you appreciate you've made the right choice for your container.
Right, exactly.
because if this was ceramic, I would not be able to lift it. And as it is, it's just me, myself, and I that was able to pick this up and lay it over and begin the root pruning process. And similar situation here with the redwood box. I use the saw here to separate the roots from the soil. It's important when you are removing the tree from the container that you do not pull against the crown of the tree and so that it's suspending the entire weight of the root system. Mm-hmm. What you want to do is to support the root system from underneath. So or drag the container away or pull from the root system itself, pull it out of the container rather than have it pulling on the crown. And the use of high-pressure water is wonderful for getting the old soil out. The soil is tired. It has no nutrients in it. And what we want to do is to replace all of the soil that we can with new soil. So using high-pressure soil and claws is the best way to really loosen everything up and blow it out. It can be a mess, but it's, yeah. And this is, just don't be afraid to pull on and pull, shake it, pull it, shake it, work it loose. That's what you're doing here. And this is the time to begin to lift out the perennials and bulbs as well. So what we're going to do is remove the woody roots. The purpose of the woody roots is for anchoring the tree. In nature, the root system will spread way out, and it anchors the tree, and it's searching out for nutrients. It's actually the white fibrous new roots that uptake nutrients, not the woody roots. These woody roots are actually taking nutrients and space, or taking space from the soil without providing any use. So, and then we'll go around the outside and do some trimming of the root system. Generally, you really don't want to remove any more than 1/3 of the root system at any time in order to just keep from shocking the tree. At the time we're doing the root pruning is the time that you want to be doing your reduction pruning in the structure of the tree as well. So soaking the root ball in a solution of Super Thrive and Dynagrow if you can. Sometimes the root ball will be too heavy to get up in, but if you can put it in a bucket of Super Thrive with Dynagrow, and any kind of, the main fertilizer is very important that it's low nitrogen, but we're looking at basically a growth stimulant with a well-balanced liquid fertilizer to start the tree off. We're going to place a layer of soil on the bottom of the container, enough to raise the crown to just slightly above grade. Once again, we're looking for that lovely smooth transition of the crown to the soil. So we don't want it to be buried at all. We really want it to be a little high. And once you've filled your container with soil, once again we can look at the placement of the tree and the quarter, the center of one of the quarters, whether it's a circle or a square. That's generally the aesthetically the best placement. And being a thorough watering is very important at this point, especially with a larger root ball, because you have to make sure that you get soil back into all of those pockets that you emptied out. Sometimes people actually use a hose to push that soil into the root ball. But you really want to water it and water it and water it. The water should just be flowing out of the container.
That's amazing. Patricia, there's been so much information. I could listen to this all afternoon. But I know we promised to do some Q&A.
Okay. Well, we covered it, didn't we? I think we
did. Oh,
okay,
gosh,
good.
Yes, we did.
Okay, good.
And I see, did you want to tell them about the special offer you have for them today?
Yes, I am offering 10% off to any of the horticulture customers, anybody listening today and that listens in the future, to call in. You can either call in and place your order with us here, or you can go to the website. We do have a secure server, and if you type into the notes that you're a Horticulture Today a horticulture customer, then I will be happy to give you a 10% off.
That's great. Well, and you know what? What we're going to do now is invite Megan Shin, Horticulture's editor, to share some questions with you that people have been asking while you were talking during your presentation.
Okay,
Megan?
Great. Thanks, Megan.
Hi. Okay. Let's see. We just showed a picture of the tree with its root ball soaking in the fertilizer solution.
Yes.
And we have a question of how long should you leave it to soak there?
15 minutes. Usually what I do is I will put the tree in the fertilizer solution and then prepare the container to, put the soil in the container. It can be no more than 15 minutes.
Okay.
That's plenty.
We have quite a few people asking questions about living in like Zone 5 or cold winter areas, whether they would be able to keep the trees in the containers outdoors, or what they should do during the winter time.
Well, part of it depends on the size of the container. The smaller the container tree, the more vulnerable it is, and anything that's in less than a 15-gallon container, I would recommend keeping in an unheated basement or a garage. Temperatures, preferably. They do not need any light in their dormancy period. They do need to be watered, however, so I often recommend people make a note on the calendar in the winter to water the tree in the basement. But I mean, the bonsai people winter their trees over in their cellars, in their root cellars. So it's the same idea. A tree that's larger than, or that's a larger tree, I've often heard of people using the hot water heater insulation and wrapping it around the tree, the container, tucking it up against the structure. Really, it's not that difficult to protect them as long as you, I mean, if you're in a zone 4 or really cold zone 5, I'd go to the lengths to give it more protection. But they're actually quite hardy.
Okay, that's good.
Uh-huh.
We have one person who says that he grows shrub roses in containers, and in the fall he takes them out of the pots and plants them in the ground. Is that something you would recommend doing with the Japanese maples, or is it a good idea to just leave them alone in their pot unless you're doing
Well, I've heard of people, I would not take them out of the container and plant them in the ground. There's an incredible amount of root growth and activity that happens after dormancy and prior to bud break. So it's just going to take root and take off, and then you no longer have a container tree. You have a tree in the ground. Controlling the root system is really what keeps the proportion of these trees. So I have heard of people putting containers, burying containers, basically burying the container to soil level and then using leaves and mulch to mulch up over the top of it. Once again, if a tree is in a container, the water, whether it's over water or underwater, those considerations, even if it's buried, needs to be kept in mind.
Okay. And then we have some questions from listeners in warmer areas. They're wondering if there are certain varieties that would do best in warmer climates, if there's anything for like a zone 8.
Yes, actually there are quite a number of trees that I recommend as the best for warmer climates. The spring color types are the best. Shinda Shoujo is the one that is absolutely tried and true and is the best performer. And for a first tree in a southern a warmer climate, it would be the one I would recommend, either Shinda Shoujo, Beni Mako, Otome Zakura. What you can do is go to my website, and under articles, there is an article choosing the best tree for your climate, and there's actually a section for hot, dry Southwest or hotter climates. And there's a whole list that have links to the individual trees with information about color, height, size, all of that.
Okay, great. And you know what? Right at the end of this, I'll go to our Facebook page and I'll put up a link to those pages on your site so that people can find them. Everyone, if you're on Facebook, if you go to facebook.com/Horticulture Magazine, I'll make sure to put some links up there.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yep. Well, so are there any other questions?
We have one person who has a very twiggy rustling and pink variety of Japanese maple, and she's wondering like how much, I guess where we talked about the root pruning, we didn't talk much about like pruning the top growth. How much could you prune?
I didn't. It's such a big subject. It's a hard thing to demonstrate in a short period of time. So, but I can, in general, once again, you don't want to take more than 1/3 of the volume of the tree at any given time. Timing is important with root pruning. I hope that I mentioned that it's very important that it's done in dormancy, preferably on the downside of dormancy, which means about a month prior to bud break. That's important. But with pruning, you can prune at any time, but in general, you don't want to take more than 1/3 of the bulk of the tree at any time.
That's great. Thank you, Megan, for fielding questions, and thank you, Patricia, for being with us here today. This has been wonderful. And thank you to Essence of the Tree for sponsoring today's workshop.
Thank you. You all have a good afternoon. I hope we'll hear from you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.